Hey, welcome to the After Chat. I am Michael.
I'm Ellis.
And today we're going to be talking about outrage culture and being easily offended. Are you ready, bro?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
Welcome to the After Chat. Real questions, real talk, real life.
All right, welcome to the After Chat. We're going to be having conversations about things that we may be of interest and beneficial for you, but we want to address the elephant in the room. So this looks a little bit different than season 1 did, and the conversations are going to go a little bit different, and we want to give a huge shout out to Stuart Britton.
Yeah.
For getting the vision of this thing initially and then feeling comfortable with us to just pass it off. And we just hope that we honor Stuart and how we handle this. So big shout out to Stuart Britton. Get one of those right there for Stuart. But we also just want to be authentic, and we want to let you guys get to know us a little bit as we do this. So we've got some fun get to know you and icebreaker type questions here. You want to do the first one?
Sure. And I'll just say we don't know a lot about each other
That's
either.
true.
So we're all going to learn here together. So all right. So here's the first one. If you had a warning label, Michael, what would yours say?
Can be spiteful. That would probably be the one that would be flashing. When I'm not my best self, I can be motivated by spite. I'll give an example.
Sure.
So I wanted to get these team T-shirts made for a specific team out at the Farmville campus, and was told no, that it wouldn't be a good idea, because then people that no longer served on that team would then have these shirts, and so to be spiteful, I got an old production team T-shirt. From that one that I got whenever I used to be on the production team here at Powhatan way back in the day. I ran lights and wore that, and nobody noticed. It wasn't a big deal, but the person that initially told me no did notice that I was wearing that shirt. But so that can be me being motivated by spite.
Okay.
But what's yours? What would yours be? And an example.
Okay. And an example. Bonus question.
Yes.
All right. I think it would say something like even keel, but with a short fuse.
Okay.
Yeah, the right thing can elevate me pretty quick. I think like an example I can think of is not like people not following directions. That'd probably be my go-to. It's, you know what? Change my answer. And it's kind of the same answer. It's driving. Okay, people don't know how to drive. To any time I'm on the road, I'm liable to just get from 0 to 100.
Okay.
No problem. Like, I think the most recent one on the way here today, I was on a 2-lane highway. I was in the right lane. There was nobody else in the world on the road except for the one car riding 2 inches from my bumper. And I'm like, why? There's a lane over there. I'm going the speed limit. What's the problem here?
Just steaming.
I don't understand. Yeah, makes me mad.
I get that way too with driving, but so I'm from Missouri originally. I learned how to drive out on curvy, hilly, windy roads with snow. Like we have actual winters out there. So the lack of inclement weather driving here in Virginia, that can also send me from 0 to 100 right quick. All right, next one.
Okay.
What's the most unusual thing you've ever eaten?
My wife and I went out to dinner with my parents like a few months ago, and we had, for an appetizer, like literal octopus tentacles.
Oh, those are good. That was going to be my most. See, we didn't rehearse these beforehand, so I didn't know what his answer was going to be. But yeah, that was going to be my answer. But I was going to say surprisingly delicious.
No.
Okay.
Sorry. I like calamari a lot. Calamari's good, but this was like a thick, like legit tentacle, like rubbery, slimy. It was no.
Okay.
Not for me. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, what's yours?
Octopus, but I was going to take it a completely different direction with it. I was going to say was at an Asian restaurant at one point back in the day, and they had squid on the menu, and I'm an adventurous eater. Like I like to try weird exotic meats and things, and and I got it, and I was like, holy smokes, this is fantastic. So all right, well, different direction. But...
I'm not an adventurous eater. We probably should have clarified this up top. That would have made the answers make sense. But yeah, that was okay.
All right.
All right. The next one. What's the most impressive thing you've ever crafted?
So this one, my daughter, she's very artistically gifted. She's a fantastic painter, drawer, all of this stuff. I am not. But I was watercolor. We were watercoloring one day, probably 10 years ago, and I made this flower. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Proud of it. Saved it. Framed it. It's in a box somewhere in my game room. We'll have to figure that out and get it out so that way we can share this when we make it. But no, most definitely, I watercolored a flower. Thought it was beautiful.
Okay. So I quit taking art as soon as it was not required, which was like 5th grade or something. And I'm also not a handyman at all. So I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel for this question. But I did a painting as well in like 4th grade, I think, it was like a dragon in the middle, and like there's a bright blue sky on one side and like a dark like storm clouds rolling through on the other side. There's a little knight with a sword and stuff. And it looks terrible. It's hilarious. But on the blue side of the sky, my art teacher came over, and she was like, "This texture is amazing with the sky. How did you do this?" What she didn't know is that I had sneezed directly on it, like 30 seconds before she came over, and so all these cool little specks were in the sky, and she loved it. She thought it was great. So there you go.
You take that A and you go with it.
Exactly. No questions asked. So.
Okay. Next one. Now these questions we're going to kind of set up what we're going to go into here in a few minutes.
Okay.
Have you ever disliked something and then changed your mind on it later?
I'm sure I have. Yes. Let's see. I used to not like ramen noodles.
Okay.
And then I went to college, and they became one of my like 4 food groups. So ramen noodles.
Okay.
That simple as that. What about you?
Mine was definitely going to be food related as well, but Brussels sprouts.
Oh, okay.
Like hated them as a kid, but I made them once as an adult. Just, I don't know. I felt like I should be trying to eat healthier.
Yeah.
And so, Brussels sprouts, and I don't know how healthy they still were, but I love them with like honey, like drizzled all over them and roasted in the oven. But yeah, so Brussels sprouts would definitely be that one.
Okay.
Another one that's not food related though would probably be the Star Wars prequels.
Oh.
Hated them when they first came out. Thought they were lame and kind of ruined everything. But revisited them later with my daughters when we was getting ready to go watch the Rise of, or what was the Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And rewatched them then. Loved them. Thought they were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. My wife and I are big Star Wars fans.
Okay.
We like the prequels for the most part, except for the Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace is
Outrage.
rough.
Outrage.
Okay. There you go.
but I thought they were all good, but hated them initially. So
okay.
All right, next one. Would you rather someone be honest and hurt your feelings, or lie to protect them?
Honest, hurt my feelings, 100%. This one's easy.
Yeah.
I'm very self-critical, so I'm probably already thinking that you're thinking something negative about me. So let's just skip the pleasantries. Let's just get it over with. Just tell me. Yeah. How about you?
Most def. I would rather just sit me down. I don't want it to be publicly. Hopefully, like I don't like a public shaming. But if you pull me into an office and say, "Listen, man, like this is something that you either did or performance based or something like that." If you pull me aside and say, "Hey, this is what I thought. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I noticed," I can handle that pretty well because I'm very self-critical as well. So I probably already know it before I'm going in.
Right.
But I would rather the uncomfortable truth to a comfortable lie.
Yeah.
Most def. All right. What was the next one?
All right. Next one is, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Dishes in the sink.
Ooh, that's
Hate
a good
it.
one.
Hate it. I don't like walking out into the kitchen first thing in the morning and seeing a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, 100% biggest pet peeve.
Yeah, mine is similar. It's just clutter. Like, out of the two of us, I'm not the deep cleaner. My wife is the deep cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's like time to tidy up, that's my jam. I can tidy up with the best of them. So if there's just stuff scattered all over the counter or the table, like, I can make it look nice in little piles, and then it's tidy. So
Still there.
yeah, it's
but
still there.
It's neatly arranged.
Exactly. It's nicer to look at.
Yes.
There you go.
Aesthetically pleasing,
Yes.
as they say. Okay. So let's just go ahead and shift into the topic for today. So we're going to be outrage culture. And I've got from RBB Communications, I've got kind of a definition of outrage culture. And it's actually, a lot of people know it whenever they see it. It's people being shamed online. But it also they use it more as an umbrella term. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be posting all this in the show notes. This doesn't mean that we affirm or believe everything that RBB Communications has ever said throughout their lifetime or what's on their website. But, I found this and I thought it would be a useful just to put some parameters around what we're talking about. Outrage culture is basically an umbrella term that encompasses several different types of behavior. Mm-hmm. The first one, we've all seen it, cancel culture or call-out culture. J.K. Rowling, famous. Yep. I mean, that's a very, recent form of the outrage culture or cancel culture that we've seen. The next one would be doxing. Mm-hmm. That's where if somebody does something that a lot of people don't like, they hunt them down, find their personal information, put it out on the internet, and just let everybody have at them. I think Nick Sandman was a very big one that happened at a Right to Life rally. Right. Someone thought that they saw him and a different Nick Sandman got doxxed, and he was like, "What's going on here? I don't know what I did." So that's one, and then the third type is review bombing.
Oh, okay.
That's where everybody that didn't like The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker went on there, and it had like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes before the release of the film, just because they didn't like where it was going.
Right.
So what have you seen from that type of thing that's jumped out to you that you've noticed?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, it's interesting that we use the term cancel culture a lot for some of the other things that are described there. It's like outrage culture is one umbrella, then cancel culture is another umbrella, but there are things below that at least this source is separated out. I think the review bombing is a huge one in today's culture. Like, you haven't even seen something, but based on, what came before it or who's attached to it or whatever it may be, you're like, well, I don't like this, and I don't want it to be popular, so I'm going to go do whatever I can to make sure it's not popular and people don't see it. Yeah.
No, and you see it a lot when Chick-fil-A was being boycotted and targeted there for a while, and Target is now. People that probably never even shopped there in the first place are hitting it for all sorts of reasons. Right. So, but what did you find that you want to bring to the table for this?
So I think this became easy to look at from kind of two perspectives, because it takes two to outrage, right? Mm-hmm. The person who is outraged, who's directing the outrage, and then the person who the outrage is being directed at. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of clung on to the person who the outrage is being directed at, because the term that I kind of attached to this, which I think is a term most people have heard, it's walking on eggshells, right? Yes. Basically, you try to be really careful when dealing with a situation or something, so you don't upset someone or make them outraged. So what I found were a lot of kind of commentaries and perspectives on people who feel this way and how they navigate it in today's culture. And I think it looks a lot like essentially self-censoring. Yes. Like, I'm not going to voice certain opinions on things, or I'm going to give you part of my opinion, but not the whole thing. I'm going to leave some in reserve because I feel like what's in here in the fenced area is crossing the line and will cause outrage.
Hit you with a comfortable lie kind of deal.
Right, exactly. So it's just not feeling comfortable, like the stories I found were people not feeling comfortable in various areas of their life or in culture to speak what they really thought about things, because the outrage is so prevalent. And I think, to a certain degree, that's always existed, but I feel like we've gone from disagreement to outrage. There's always been disagreement. There always will be disagreement, but how we express it, that's how it becomes outrage. You know, because it's loud, it's out there, it's on social media, it's out in public for everybody to see. That I feel like that is what takes it to outrage.
And we're more easily able to voice it and just shoot it off into the world.
That's for
just
sure.
because of social media.
Yeah.
You know, and I found a really cool resource from Psychology Today about why does outrage feel so good. And one of the things, let me get to it. I got notes on notes on notes.
He really does.
So basically, you start having what's called in-group, out-group reasoning. And it seems that, and he went on to say, it seems like it's more prevalent now as ever. And not only are people blaming the other side for the woes of the world, but with the help of social media platforms, we're now able to do so publicly in a way that's often dripping with outrage. And he goes on to distinguish between the two types of outrage. One is just a general moral outrage at a legit act of wrongdoing where someone's being harmed in a way. But then he also goes on to mention how there's another kind of outrage, another type of moral outrage. That's less about outing someone for problematic behavior than it is about inflating one's own sense of self.
Oh, okay.
By buffering one's threat to what he calls their moral identity. And he says that expressed outrage that seems to primarily bolster one's own sense of self often goes by the term virtue signaling. And it's framed as moral grandstanding, but it has the function of underscoring one's own virtuous attributes by putting down someone else. And so a lot of the outrage and stuff that we see by the doxing and the negative review bombs and the attempts to cancel people, it's not so much about just them like actually being outraged by something, but it's more about they're so bad and look at me because I'm so good because I'm so outraged by this, and the fact that you're not means there's something probably wrong with you too.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Like you take, for example, I talked about driving earlier and how that sets me off pretty quick. By me saying these people can't drive, what are they doing? Like inherently, that's saying I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm the best driver. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like to the point of that, like that's definitely prevalent in our society today. And I think maybe it's people. It's exactly what that said. It's like people kind of inflating, like I'm so good at this, and they have to put other people down to do it for whatever reason.
Well, what do you think would cause somebody to do that? Like, what is it about them that? Because you see it all the time. People are always on the internet blasting things. So, like, other than just what do you think the stem? Where do you think that stems from?
I think
like that need to put somebody down in order to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, I think it can come from a few places. I think people, by human nature, we take pride in the things we're good at, and we want to not spend a lot of time talking about the things we're not good at. And so to really cling on to, this is something I feel I'm good at. Any way you can kind of boost that sense of that, you're by nature, you're gonna be attracted to that. And so for some people that means I'm outraged at this person who I feel like is not as good at this thing, and that by association makes me elevated for this person. So I think in a way it always kind of ties back to what's this person kind of lacking, what's missing that they feel like they have to fill in the gaps, you know? So what do you think?
No, and I think a lot of it's ego, and just low self-image and self-esteem. And I found, and like I said, notes on notes. So this Why People Get So Easily Offended article from Psychology Today. If your ego is resilient and reasonably strong, such that you don't take things too personally, you may not be that upset with someone else's tactlessness or insensitivity or just general difference of opinion. But if you're afflicted with self-doubt or self-image issues generally, or if you haven't yet learned how to validate yourself or take that validation from somewhere else, like who God says you are, your emotions will tend to take you over, and you'll be driven to take offense at whatever or whoever appears to cause you a slight or offense or just have a difference of opinion. And so I think a lot of that's just not knowing who you are. And so I thought, what else did you bring? But I want to give you a chance to come in.
No, I just to piggyback off that point, I think that like a lot of it's if you put your worth in what people think of you, then anytime somebody expresses something negative about that worth, it's going to impact you.
Yes.
Like I think it's really as simple as that. Like you kind of feed off of what you put your worth in.
And as followers of Jesus, we shouldn't be so worried about what the world says we are and who the world says we are.
Right.
But we should be taking our sense of identity and self from who God says we are. So we don't necessarily need to feed into that. And one of the things that we've got for our message that we're going to be looking at some clips from, Pastor Brian Hughes does a great job of helping us not be so offendable. So let's take a look at the first clip that we've got pulled for that.
Yeah.
I think there are 4 things, and we're going to go through them one at a time. The first, don't die on every hill. Don't die on every hill. I used to do a good bit of marriage counseling, and a couple would come to me, and they were always in crisis by the time they got to me. I never had a meeting with a husband and a wife where I asked, hey, how's it going? And they answered, oh, it's just amazing. We just came in today to tell you how great things were. No, they only sat down with me when they've come to some impasse, when they've tried everything else, and they say something like, I guess we'll have to go see the pastor now and see if that works. And so they would talk for a while, and they would confess each other's sins, and he'd tell me everything that was wrong with her, and she'd tell me everything that was wrong about him, and somewhere in there, oftentimes I would get up right in the middle of their volleying back and forth, and I would ask for a minute, and I would leave and go down the hallway, and I would come back with 2 blank notepads and 2 pens. I'd walk back in the room, and I would hand each of them a pad and a pen, and I would say something like this: I want you to take the next few minutes, and I want you to write down everything you think is wrong with your spouse. I mean everything. Everything you don't like, everything you think they need to change, everything that makes you mad. Write all of it down, like all of it. And no one ever paused to ponder right there. I mean, from the time I turned them loose, they just start writing. Furiously, they're writing. They're flipping pages, and they're filling them up. But usually somewhere around page 3 is where they'd start slowing down. They always had a long list. Now, remember, by the time they get to me, this tension's been building for a while. And somewhere in there, they usually look a little smug when they're done, like, look how many grievances you've caused me, all that I've had to put up with all this time. And so I would confirm with them, hey, did you get it? Do you need any more time? No, Pastor, we think we got it. I think that's it. I would say, okay, now, I want you to study your list, and I want you to circle the 3 things that are most important to you that your spouse does that you want them to change. Just 3, and choose well. And this was a whole lot harder. Sometimes they try to argue with me like, hey, I need like 4 or 5. No, just 3. That's all you get. And when they were finished circling the 3 things, I would say this. I would say, from this day forward, you're going to agree. I would look at her and I would say, you're going to agree to do all you can to satisfy his 3 concerns, the 3 things he circled on his list. And I would turn to him and I would say, from this day forward, you're going to do all you can to address and satisfy the 3 concerns that are on her list. And then I would wait for the inevitable question. One of them would always ask, well, I got a couple, 3 pages here, Pastor. What about the rest of it? And I would say, the rest of it no longer exists. If you want your marriage to be great, you have to pick your battles. You cannot die on every hill. So you're going to forget about the rest of that stuff.
All right, so what jumped out to you from that clip?
Got to pick your battles.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that was the moral of the whole thing. And there's a million battles that we could fight, every day of our lives. And it's exhausting. It would be exhausting to get outraged over every single one, to try to die on every single one of those hills. Yeah. You can't. You have to prioritize.
And what I got from that I thought was that he didn't state it, but I think it's implicit in there. You can choose what you're going to be outraged and offended by, or at a minimum react to. You can choose the way that you react to a bunch of things that offend you. He was speaking specifically about marriage in that example, But I think you can extrapolate that out to literally anything, anything else. And I've jotted down, if we look for things to be outraged about, we're going to find it.
Yes, that's for sure.
So you got to pick your battles. You can choose how you respond to things. You don't have to give it the emotional energy or the mental energy that it takes to walk around being outraged, because that's got to be exhausting, you would think.
Yeah.
So, all right, closing thoughts on that one.
Well, like you said, he talked specifically about the context of marriage. And I think that, in my marriage, it's important how I respond to something that I'm frustrated about. When it's some random person we don't know expressing an opinion we don't like, we might not feel that same responsibility for how we respond. But I think it's important that we kind of carry that over into every aspect, every relationship in our lives.
Yes.
So.
All right, let's look at this next clip.
Yeah.
Secondly, don't put your standard on everyone else. The reality is, the truth is, not everybody's going to see everything the same way. We all know that intellectually, but we don't all fight like it. Our latest vitriol is centered around our desire to have my standard apply to everybody else, not just to me. We've done that for 2 years now with masks and vaccines, and we've done it with schools, and we've done it with the politics of sports, and we do it with morality. And I'm reminded of the famous words of Joshua, who's leading the people of God, and he's in a position of authority and influence, and he's affirming that he gets to choose his standard, but he also affirms that everybody else gets to choose theirs. Famously, he said, if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of that your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua was acknowledging what you and I think, sometimes forget, that my standard is my choice. My moral compass, that's my choice. My political ideology, that's my choice. My ethical foundation, my faith position, I get to decide all of that. So why do we act like I should get a choice, but you shouldn't? You get to choose your standard.
We don't get to choose for other people, and they don't get to choose for us. But that also means that we shouldn't be going around and imposing what we, our standards on other people. I thought that was a really good point.
I agree. I think it ties back to a lot of the stuff we talked about earlier of like, I'm mad that this person doesn't have this opinion or do this a certain way. If only they could do it like me, then everything would be good and I wouldn't be outraged. I mean, that's exactly it.
Because they don't do or say or like what we like or think what we think, we're just going to demonize them, dehumanize them, and then try to ruin their lives in some sort of way. Yep. And that's just incredibly unfair. That's us that would be us trying to impose our will on someone else and cause them to self-censor.
Yep.
To go back to the point that you made.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think, just a quick example, like I tend to be very organized. I try to have my calendar straight, take notes with everything, that kind of thing. Not everybody operates that way. And it's often a source of frustration for me, but I'm like, look, at the end of the day, that's not how they operate, and that's okay.
Yes.
As on I think in the context of it professionally, everybody's got to be able to get the job done, but how they do it is up to them. As long as they're getting the job done, then that's what matters. So, and I have to remind myself of that often. So I think something like this is a good reminder of that.
Absolutely. All right, let's look at our third clip here.
We need to stop baiting the argument. Stop baiting the argument. For those of you who know the story of Jesus, I want you to think for a minute about in the narrative of the Jesus story in the Gospels in the Bible, who did the baiting for the 3 or so years of his ministry? Who did all the baiting? And Jesus was always right. Jesus was always perfect. Jesus had God on his side. Jesus was the master with words. Jesus could win every argument every time. But who did the baiting? It was always the bad guys. In Matthew 22, He tells us that the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap Jesus with his words. In Luke 11, they were trying to, what Luke says is, draw many things out of Jesus, lying in wait for him and seeking to catch Jesus in something he might say. In John 8, in a very famous story there, we're told that they said this to test Jesus, that they might have something to accuse him of. The bad guys, did the baiting, not Jesus. We all know that social media has become a war zone, with people making statements just to provoke responses that leave a shrapnel of pain and carnage, of division all over the place. Somehow we think it's okay to say things hiding behind a screen that we would never say out loud to someone's face. Some of us do the baiting. Others of us take the bait. And some do both. But we all get to choose. And we could choose neither. If you want to be slow to anger, quit participating in the online war of words. Stop reading it. Stop responding to it. Just stop it. When that mess comes up in my feed, I just skip it. I don't read it at all. And if it comes up enough, I hide it altogether. I don't need that in my life, and you don't either. So just cut it out.
You know, I think what he was really getting at there is that it just shouldn't include us. You know, we don't have to participate in it at all.
Yeah.
You know, we get to control what we respond to, what we look at, and you know, to kind of tie it back to his the first statement that he made when we looked at the first clip.
Yep.
You know, pick 2 or 3, but you don't have to engage in every single thing on there. You don't have to take the bait for every single thing.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't have to feed into it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've kind of looked at it so far from the standpoint that people have opinions that they're really passionate about, whether it's ones they hold or they're outraged over opinions other people hold. But some people are just there because they like to have a fight.
Yes.
And they, for whatever reason, it makes them feel good about themselves. They enjoy just having a fight. And so I think when people have motivations like that, like, it's especially important how we approach this and, like, what are the things we're doing to prevent ourselves from engaging in this.
And when you're having those conversations or you're seeing people act that way, you know, it's generally pretty easy to find someone that's genuinely seeking understanding, and those that just want to online flame and get into the internet wars. Yeah. You know, and it's same with if you do happen to be talking to somebody face to face, you know, you can generally tell if somebody's just nitpicking, looking for a fight, or somebody that genuinely wants to seek understanding.
Right.
I think we got one more clip.
Okay.
One last piece. If we want to be slow to anger, we need to wear the right clothes. Wear the right clothes. You might think, I mean, what does my wardrobe have to do with being less offendable, slower to anger? What does my attire have to do with that? Well, if you're a follower of Jesus, everything. This is what the Apostle Paul wrote in Colossians. He said, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has grievances against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Clothe yourself, not with slick arguments or winning platforms or attractive campaigns, not with banners or flags or even righteous indignation. No, Paul admonishes the follower of Jesus to clothe yourself with compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience and forgiveness, and to wrap around all of that the one thing that Jesus said would set us all apart: love.
So one of the things that he mentioned there was putting on the right clothes. And to me, that just brought back up the imagery of cast off the old self and put on the new. You know, it really just reminded me of, like, we're not who we used to be. We don't have to feed into the things in this world. We're supposed to cast our minds and our thoughts on things above.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that people do run around being outraged about, offended about, they're just opinions that ultimately don't matter anyway. It's all about having your thoughts and stuff, all of your thoughts and directions and energies going towards earthly things and not on things from above.
Right. Yeah, I think, it ties into a lot of what we talked about today, which is we can choose how we enter these situations. We can choose how we approach these discussions. I think it's easy to kind of let yourself enter these kind of things neutrally, and however the conversation, like whatever way it sways you, that's the way you're going to go. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yes.
You can choose how you're going to enter the situation. You can choose what you're going to clothe yourself with, and allow that to dictate your posture and your actions as you kind of walk through these. So,
And so, the last thing that really want to say on the I'm offended culture and outrage culture is that it doesn't have to include us. And there's a way that we can differentiate between legitimate human suffering and things that should outrage all of us, and things that just don't really matter at all. So that's kind of my final takeaway on this. What was yours?
Yeah, I agree. I think, we didn't come here today to try to solve outrage culture, because it's, it's much bigger than us. But like individually, we can choose how we conduct ourselves, what we clothe ourselves with, how we approach it. So we don't, to your point, we don't have to participate in it. And I think if we can start doing that on an individual level, then we can start to chip away at the outrage culture. So.
Yes. All right, so we want to thank everybody for being with us today on the relaunch of the After Chat. I thought this was awesome.
It was fun. I had a good time.
And I did too. And so if you want to leave us a review and we read that review here on an episode, you'll get an awesome After Chat mug. We'll send you one of these if you leave a review, and we read it. And you can follow, subscribe, all the things, and share this out, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for the After Chat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The After Chat.